The Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by these great sponsors. Are you looking to value your equipment more accurately, target the right buyers and close more deals, reach your ideal customer? Then look no further. Fusable isn't just about ag data, it's about action. Our best-in-class solution empowers you to value your equipment accurately, make informed decisions, and find the perfect prospects. Ignite your dealership's growth at fusable.com/movingiron-podcast. Out in the field, every decision counts. You wouldn't plant without testing your soil, so why would you prospect blind? Introducing EDA, your one-stop shop for ag equipment intel. EDA goes beyond specs and prices. You get deep dive data on every piece of equipment like UCC filings that help track ownership changes and uncover potential sales leads. D&B firmographics, which help you understand the financial health and buying power of potential customers. Market trends that help you stay ahead of the curve, and insights on equipment demands and pricings. With EDA, you're not just looking at data, you're seeing opportunity. Find the right buyer, sell smarter, and build lasting relationships. Visit edadata.com for your free demo and unlock the power of knowledge. For over 80 years, Iron Solutions has been your go-to data source for ag dealers, lenders, and manufacturers. Get powerful appraisal and value forecasting tools that fuel profitable decisions anytime, anywhere. Get your free demo at ironsolutions.com. Iron Solutions, confidence in every click. Today, there are many ways to finance ag equipment, but nobody delivers simple, fast, or flexible financing like AgDirect. Learn more about your options to buy, lease, and refinance equipment at agdirect.com. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours.
When you partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. I've got Jon Miller here. He's the used equipment manager for Krone North America, so that's Canada and the United States, right?
Yes, sir.
Jon? So Jon, I met Jon, 2-3 years ago now. He came out to Moving Iron Summit and had a chance to visit with him there and get to know him a little bit. And I thought, you know what? I would be remiss not to have Jon Miller on the Moving Iron Podcast. So Jon, man, appreciate you being on.
Remissed. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, bud. Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. Tell me where you grew up at and kind of how you ended up in the wonderful hot seat of used equipment.
The hot seat. It's where I like it. Especially on a day like today where it's 15 below.
That's right. Exactly right.
So born and raised right here in Northern Illinois, where I work from home right here. And so were my parents, born and raised here. So no stranger to 15 below weather. But my dad all my life has bought and sold used equipment. So right that's kind of how I cut my teeth. He doesn't do a lot anymore. He's kind of really scaled that back as he's getting older and that. But in the meantime, decades ago, I branched off on my own and went selling farm equipment full time. First for a Case IH dealer for 2 years, roughly, and then secondly for a New Holland dealership, and I was there for a little over 13 years, I believe it was, and the last 7 of that was as store manager of one of our branches, store manager, sales manager, but I never stopped selling. So that's pretty much been my. I mean, I've done a lot of other little different things here and there, some construction, some farm hand work and things like that, but always been in and around agriculture and always around the iron, and pretty much have been selling ever since. So, and I started with Krone here November of 21 as the used equipment manager. So all of that led me to this.
Right on. So used equipment manager is probably what of all the jobs I've had working inside dealerships and those things, I always found the used equipment remarketing manager, whatever you want to call it. I think those are to me, that's probably the most rewarding and the most stressful job I think that you could have inside of a dealership, and at any level, just because of the fact of the rewarding part of it is you get to look at what's going on around you and you're kind of influencing what's happening in that marketplace and what you see happening with used equipment and influencing the selling of equipment from on the new side and those kind of things. Also, the stressful side of that is you're the one that's putting numbers on stuff. You're the one that's having the responsibility to keep inventories in check, and no matter what happens, it all falls back in your lap. So that's the fun part of being on the used equipment side, it feels like.
Yeah, I'm used to being the bad guy.
You're never the good guy, are you?
Right. Very rarely.
You never get a thank you when you sell that machine in the first 30 minutes that you bring it in because you booked it right? You know.
Yeah, and you definitely don't get a thank you when you don't get that deal. You know,
right.
So a big part of my role naturally is all of the used evaluations for our Krone America stores go through me. So Krone actually owns 5 company stores in the U.S.
Okay.
We've got two in Wisconsin and 3 in California called Krone America. So they're a typical dealership, just like any other dealership. Parts, sales, service. We actually sell a few other short line brands to kind of round out the offering, being Krone is strictly hay and forage.
Right.
So I deal with the salesmen at those stores on a daily basis. And all the appraisals come through me, and I'm not always the good guy in those situations, But when we don't get that deal, and another dealer did, and they got hung with that piece of equipment, I don't typically get a thank you for helping dodge that bullet, but we lived to do another trade another day, so
that's the one. The one thing about the used equipment side of the business too is that you look at, I always kind of, those old cartoons where you've got a devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, and the devil's telling you what to do, the wrong thing to do, and the angel's supposed to be telling you what the right thing to do. Is I always kind of thought I was somewhere in the middle between the devil and the angel, and I was telling you just enough to keep you out of trouble, but just enough to be safe on the other side too. So it was always
the
there.
thing. It's a tightrope act, isn't it?
Every
time you do an appraisal, I mean, and I think maybe I'm in a little bit of a unique dynamic myself, being that I was on the other side of this equation for so long, and then transitioned into sales manager and that, but. I've been the salesman out bringing in the leads and bringing in the pictures of trade-ins and, what can we do with this? And, I was the guy that, thought that we weren't giving enough for X trade. And I know I'm not going to get the deal unless we give a little more and this and that. But then once you're on the other side of that equation, you start to realize why, and I think that's where I feel more dealership groups go to a centralized used equipment manager type arrangement, where there's one guy, maybe he works from home, maybe he works at one location, maybe there's 10 locations, but there's one guy, or possibly a panel, maybe a group of guys that are tasked with appraising every trade. And a big reason for that is to take the emotion completely out of that equation. I know he's your favorite customer. Maybe he's your uncle. Maybe he's, your best friend from college or whatever, and you really want to sell this machine to him. But the bottom line is the open market does not care who he is or what his trade is. Well, it cares what his trade is. That's the only thing it cares about. What is it?
Right.
How many hours? What are the options? What market are you in? The stuff is only ever worth so much. So to hit that number right on every time is a monumental task. But after you do it for a while, you kind of get comfortable with it. And I'm comfortable with it now. You get in enough fights, you learn how to swing, and to the point where it's not nearly as stressful now as it used to be. But the bottom line is you have to be willing to say no at times, and you really have to be on top of your game, and that's, a lot of it's still just your gut. I don't know if AI could totally take over my role ever. I think it could get close, but I think at the end of the day, there's certain little nuances and different factors at play with every individual deal that, sometimes you really do have to lean on your gut because it's all you got.
Yeah. Yeah, I think on the AI thing, you're pretty accurate on that. I think about everything, AI is about 85 and 90% there. Just that other 10 or 15% is really what. Right. That's where the money's made or lost.
What's 15% of $500,000?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Yep. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the company stores when you're looking at how that process works and what that looks like. As a independent dealer, like my friend down at Elite Ag, Adam Werner, and he's a Krone dealer. I've known Adam for quite a while. When you look at that model versus your model, what's some of the differences and what are some of the what are some of the differences and what are some of the big advantages you might have comparatively?
Well, typically the disadvantages outweigh the advantages of a company store. I don't know that there's any manufacturers that want to, that the goal is to have nothing but company stores. It's usually a stopgap, emergency type situation.
Sure.
Maybe that's not the right terminology, but regardless, it's more out of necessity than want. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. Our company stores are strategically located in areas where, the numbers have told us over the years that there is a big market for Krone products. And, we don't have dealer representation in those areas. And have struggled to find dealer representation. Not that nobody wants to sell Krone, but the biggest hurdle I think that we deal with anymore is just the brand purity is being pushed so much on the major line dealers. Yep. The bottom line is the majority of what Krone builds, the major manufacturers build a version of it also.
Sure.
Which Krone has a few items that the majors don't. We have some niche products. The Big M is one of them. Yep. The 32, 36 foot wide, self-propelled, 450 horse triple mower. Right. Nobody else has exactly that. Everybody has triples, and we do too. Mm-hmm. And that is a big market. But the Big M being a completely compact, self-contained unit like that is a product that the majors don't have. So that's a niche. We've carved out a nice little niche with our HDP high density big pack square balers. Mm-hmm. And there's certain areas where we own the market with those balers, just certain pockets. But for the most part, we build hay and forage equipment, and so does the big manufacturers. So, and, typically we want those guys as our dealers because we sell some very high-tech, very complex equipment. You get into what we would consider our commercial products or our big products, our Big X choppers, our Big M self-propelled mowers, our big pack square balers. You start getting into some pretty complex, pretty high-tech equipment, and it takes, real live technicians to keep that stuff supported just like it does with the majors with their combines and tractors and choppers. So you want those dealers that have the infrastructure and the people to be able to support our products as they should. But it's hard to find. So we typically end up with, dealers that also have, a couple of short lines, say Versatile or McCormick or, something along that lines, that also want to round out their offering and be able to offer hay equipment. So they might offer Krone. Or a dealer that, sold to a bigger conglomerate, or that, John Deere pulled their contract or whatever, and they still want to keep the doors open. They want something to round out that offering. But it's pretty difficult for us to be able to kind of edge in to one of the major manufacturers' dealerships and be able to have those individuals sell our products. Just because they push the brand purity so hard. So that drives a lot of it. So what we end up with is a lot of what we call white space in the country, where we don't have really any dealership, representation, but there's still definitely a strong market for our products. And if you can't find them, sometimes you have to take it on your own hands. And
Right.
So that's where we ended up opening up some of these company stores. So successfll, and that's also, kind of a hallmark of company stores, I think, in the industry in the past, is that it's just, they're just a money pit that you just throw cash down this hole,
Right.
until you finally find somebody that's willing to take over that territory and actually run it like a real dealership. So we don't have that. So our company stores have been successful, and we have done what we've set out to do, and that's to gain and hold a presence with our products in those markets. But if the right deal comes along and another dealership group wants to take it over, and it makes sense, and it's good for everybody involved, then it's not to say that our company stores will last forever, but right now it's working, and there's no plans to go away from that model anytime soon.
Yep. So are you the same guy, for example, that would look, if I wanted to lease a Krone and you gotta have lease residuals and those kind of things and the leasing side of it? Are you the same person that looks at those as well?
I mean, I would look at that, but we partner with DLL and Ag Direct for
I got
our
you. Okay.
our manufacturer, offering for our financing. So
Sure.
they're gonna generate those residual values.
Gotcha.
And I do get involved in a little bit of that. So basically, anything that touches used equipment, I get involved in one aspect or another, whether it's our company stores, our Krone America stores, or whether it's, floor plan appraisals for our dealers, special programs, say whether it would
Sure.
be maybe financing, or say like an extended warranty program or something like that, a rental program, something like that is something that I would also touch with my input.
Right on. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the chopper market. I mean, the chopper market seems like it's kind of following the same pattern that bigger is better, and we're seeing bigger and bigger machines get produced every year. Whether you're talking Kloss, Deere, Krone, everybody's just got something that's bigger than it was last year. Horsepower wise, just keeps growing. I mean, obviously, I think a big push behind that bigger is better thing is, obviously, I think it all points back towards labor availability and what that looks like. I mean, you're doing more with one machine than you can with two, and those kind of things, and what that looks like. But I guess as you're looking at it, John, you're looking at Krone's offering, what's your thought of the future, and how do you see the size of choppers either getting bigger, or do you see something maybe breaking off to something smaller when autonomous comes around? I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's always been my thought, not just with choppers, but with ag equipment in general. Is years ago when you built a machine shed with 12-foot sidewalls, you thought you had it's tall enough for anything that you could possibly ever own for your farm.
Sure.
And now, if your shop doesn't have 16-foot sidewalls, it's like, what are you doing? You got to build for the
Right.
future.
Right.
So everybody throughout history has said that this stuff can't possibly get any bigger. After the first 12-row corn planter, like, well, geez, why would you ever need any more than 12 rows? And now you're talking 48-row corn planters.
Right.
There's probably
Right.
somebody that wants to build a 100-row corn planter out there somewhere. I don't know, but at some point, I think just our infrastructure in general can't stand equipment much bigger than what we have today. I mean, and for one, especially like when it concerns Krone or Kloss, some of our European manufacturers, the road width restriction for on the roadways is what does it work out to be? 10 feet, basically.
Yeah.
It was 10 and a half feet.
Yeah.
So, you have these massive machines like our big X1180 is 1156 horsepower. And, we put 960 32s minimum drive tires
Right.
on those here.
Yep.
In Europe, they've got these skinny little pizza cutters on them to try to get them, with, under width so they can go down the road with them, which
Yeah.
is also the reason why, folding corn heads were introduced. It wasn't for our market. It was for the European market.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And
That's
now
right.
every corn head folds here. Why would you buy a
Right.
rigid corn head here? So I think even in this country where we don't really have, at least not legality, restrictions with, for road travel and things like that. But, bridges, I mean, some of the old country road bridges aren't big enough to hold, every year you see, a few more pictures online of some tractor that fell through a bridge somewhere.
Right.
Because it wasn't engineered for a machine that size, so I think
I like
it's
the one you see with the combine or whatever going down the road, and they've got the lateral tilt on just enough to get it through the bridge, or they got one tire up on top of the concrete. It's super safe.
Oh, I did that once. I demoed a 12-row rigid corn head on a combine, and I was trying to sneak a mile up the road to this guy's next field, and I met this probably 16-year-old girl in a Ford Escort, and she just didn't know what to do when I tipped it, and I went like this. She just sat there and they drove over her.
Yeah.
So, but the guys that they leave it on and they try to snake around the road sign.
Yep. Yep.
So, but at some point, this stuff it really, I don't think can get any bigger. And I think you add the autonomy component into it, where at some point, probably a lot sooner than we expect, or maybe that we're even ready for, we're going to start to see real live cabless autonomous equipment.
Yeah.
And if that's the case,
I agree.
those machines can run longer hours. You can run more of those machines potentially in each field. And secondly, I don't know if you really want to put an autonomous tractor in front of a 60-foot field cultivator, but I'd be more comfortable putting that in front of a 30-foot field cultivator.
Right.
At least if you do wrap it around a pole, you only ruined a 30-foot machine and not a 60-foot machine.
Right.
So I think there may be a component there, but I think as the autonomy comes on more prevalent, I think we're going to see the size of this stuff probably not get smaller, but it won't get any bigger, and you'll just see more of them. There'll be more of a redundancy factor, where if one goes down, the other one's still rolling.
Yep.
So
yeah, when I look at that, you have the conversation with folks about this, and the biggest difference between the ag side and the construction side, when you're looking at the size of machines, because obviously construction equipment's been huge forever, but the difference between that is you've got one giant excavator, or one giant articulated truck or a big wheel loader or something like that, and they're at that one mine forever, right? Mm-hmm. They run it forever until it blows up and they get a new one or whatever. But then they can also break those down and take them from place to place to place if needed. When we get to the point where we got to start breaking down the combine to go from field to field to field, that's not even practical. You know what I mean? So I think we're starting to see this happen too. So on that point, size and tires have always been something that I've thought a lot about. And to me, when I look at the size of tires that we're seeing, like you're talking about 900s, and you see some of these guys that got 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 metrics on there, big singles like that, you're starting to see more and more of these machines that are big like this getting manufactured with tracks on them. And you're starting to see that footprint where you have a bigger, you have the same amount of footprint, but it's in a more narrow package. As you look at that kind of stuff and you're looking at your line of equipment, do you ever see a time when maybe tracks become a bigger part of your portfolio?
I don't think anytime soon. Actually, I think it's probably more difficult for us to sell a chopper with tracks on it than it is with tires.
Yeah.
Because naturally there's such a premium on that when you buy it new.
Sure.
The customer expects a big portion of that back when he trades it in. And it's so hard to give him that when it's just not important to the next guy. The next guy he doesn't have a compaction issue, or at least he doesn't think he does. doesn't think it's severe enough that he needs to own tracks for the amount of extra cost and upkeep that costs. And on top of that, used tracks is a whole lot different than brand new tracks.
Right.
As far as upkeep and maintenance and repairs. So to me, I would much rather see all of our choppers, at least for the foreseeable future, go out of the factory with tires. And actually, to be honest, I haven't seen a Krone chopper with tracks in this country yet.
And I haven't seen a chopper with any make with
and
tracks
I'm not
on
even
it.
sure. We may have sold some in this country, but I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
But I have seen quite a few Kloss choppers with tracks. But even then, I would imagine if you talk to the Kloss guys, they would probably sooner they had tires.
Yeah.
On the resale side.
Yeah, exactly. Because most manufacturers, that's about $100,000 to $125,000 option in most cases. So it's a big deal. All right, when you're looking at where you're at right now, with what we see happening in 24, there's a lot of gloom and doom naysayers out there, which I'm not necessarily disagreeing with them, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as what folks are making it out to be. I know we're starting out kind of rough, but I think there's some things that are coming. If you listen to the podcast, listen to Sean Hackett talk, there's some things coming that could change the way the outcome of the crop prices that we're seeing right now. I guess, John, as you look out there from the hay and forage side of the business, which just seems to be more and more forage is being grown and produced in the country every year. I guess as you look at that, what are your thoughts and how do you see 24 shaping up for you guys?
I think 24 is going to be real similar to 23.
Okay.
I think 23 was a good year for us, but it was pretty even keel. It wasn't a barn burner, but it wasn't dismal either.
Right.
I think 24 is going to be real similar. 25, however, I think is going to be a whole different ball game, and not for the better. In my feeling now, maybe that'll change if we get into June or July of this year. But that's how I feel now. And even in an election year, anything could happen.
Yeah.
And God forbid what happens after the election, depending on who we elect or depending on who is declared to be the president.
Right.
Who knows what can happen at that point. And that absolutely affects our market. That absolutely affects, our customers' buying habits and just their confidence in the market in general. So I think 2025 is a complete crapshoot, but if I had to guess, I'd say that it's not going to look good. 24, I think there's still enough residual, money to be spent. There's still we had successful enough 23 and 22 that I think there's still enough desire and there's still enough dollars out there that we'll have a good year yet. The production has come back 100%. There's basically no scarcity anymore for our products or anybody else's. And definitely the lots are starting to fill up again, with new and used.
Yeah.
So I've seen, I think the auction values are going to continue to decline in this year.
Agreed.
I think, an auction value today is going to look totally different in January of 25, for sure. We've already seen it. To me, it felt like it happened in about 3 months' time. The auction values pretty well across the board lost about 15%.
Yeah.
Here back, last half of last year. So we really started the decline started to really show its face, probably back in June, July of last year, for us anyway. And I think we're going to continue to see that. I don't know that we're going to see quite such a drastic drop, but it'll be gradual. And I think this whole kind of downturn has been a slow boil anyways.
Right.
It's not a flip of a switch like it felt like 2014 was, and I think because 14 is still so fresh in everybody's minds, I think a lot of dealers, including myself, kind of forecasted this. We knew it wasn't a matter of if, but when things were going to take a turn. And, even back during the hot and heavy COVID years, everything was going crazy and, you couldn't get new equipment and the used equipment was selling as fast as you could get it in. but at the same time, not knowing for sure when that decline was going to happen,
Right.
I didn't necessarily look at the last 6 months or the last 12 months, sales data or auction history when I was doing evaluations back then. I was looking at, 2018, 2019 to really have kind of more of a tempered, outlook on what this stuff, should be worth, or more importantly, if we miss the window to sell it this season and it sits until next season, what's it worth next year?
Right.
Is that decline going to happen? And I think, the old timers when I was a kid used to talk about the 80s and the crisis in the 80s and high interest rates and all this stuff. And it was hard to sell equipment. I was just a little squirt. I was born in 83, so I don't really remember it. But I do remember 2014 vividly, and that whole decline and what a struggle that was. So that was still fresh in my mind during the entire COVID debacle. And, so really just trying to be as realistic as possible with trade values. At the same time, we knew there was some scarcity. We knew that there was some opportunities out there. So, if it was a popular piece, the hours were right, the options were right. We knew we were going to be able to sell it. We'd get a little more bullish on it. But, for some of the more wild card type machines, it was a very, very tempered, kind of valuation, based on more what I would consider reality and not COVID hysteria.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was doing the same thing. I was taking a look at 17, 18 model stuff and trying to kind of figure out what was going on there. My thought process for 24 is that we're going to continue to see a gradual decline in auction values. So that could be accelerated too, just depending on how much stuff is actually out there that's going to come in. There was the notion that we didn't sell hardly anything during COVID, and we just didn't get delivered during COVID. It's all showing up now. So I think that's the biggest overarching thing there. I've talked a little bit about this. I see a 15 to 25% decline in values over the course of 24 into halfway through the first 2 quarters of 25, and then when I start looking at the second half of 25, that's like, the new normal, whatever that is. Kind of goes back to that 17, 18, 19 kind of time frame where there wasn't a lot going on, that was really, influencing the marketplace. It just kind of seemed like it was just there back and forth. We'd get some weather scares and those kind of things. Typical stuff in the marketplace, but nothing crazy, right?
Right. And
I think that's what the thing that really scares me the most about where we're at now and inventory wise, isn't necessarily the number of machines, but it's the price of those machines that we're seeing right now, the used side, and that used value that we see right now coming through is I mean, you start talking about $300,000 used machines back in 17 and 18. I'm like, man, God, how are we going to get rid of this? Now we're talking about $400,000 and $500,000 machines, and that's a whole other level.
Yeah, and that's the truth. And now you look at interest rates now too. On top of that, it's a perfect storm, man. You're talking 7.5% interest on a $500,000 note for 5 years. That's like $125,000 interest,
right?
So, and I mean, from the customer, not to mention the carrying costs for the dealer.
Exactly.
And not to mention just the fact that, throughout COVID, throughout this whole, debacle, we've seen 20 to 30% price increase in new equipment. And of course, the used stuff to a point has to follow that.
Right.
I mean, not it's not going to follow in line directly with that.
Sure.
At least I would think that it shouldn't. Just being that when the scarcity's gone and the stuff's sitting on the lot taking up space, now we got to get real, and the stuff has to go somewhere, but it does still follow that new price to a point.
Right.
So regardless, you're talking, 2-3 year old chopper, 1,000-ish hours, big chopper package, $500,000 used.
Yep.
And I think that's a big hurdle it's a big mental block thing for a lot of guys. It's like, when combines crested $250,000, that was a big deal. And that's the thing. I think it's mental. I think it's a psychological thing too, to a point. I think it's not something we should take lightly. It's a real problem, you know, when a farmer's looking at a $250,000 item, he doesn't say this tractor costs $250,000. He says this tractor costs $250,000. You
Right.
know, or if he sees a $500,000, or even if he sees a $460,000 item, he says that's a $500,000. You know, he rounds
Yeah.
up for effect. But regardless, there's that mental block there that it's like, you know, $500,000. You know, you're thinking to yourself, this is a used machine, it's a used chopper, you know, for
Right.
$500,000, and he starts second guessing everything in his operation. Like, do I really need to keep feeding cattle? You know, do I really
Yeah.
need to keep milking? Like,
Right.
you know, when a used chopper costs $500,000, like I never thought I'd ever see this. You know, it's like they start soul searching at that point. You know,
Right.
as I would too. So, and you know, back to your point about big. You know, big stuff's impressive, but you know, it's like Class 8, Class 9 combines, 24-row planters. You know, it's impressive at the farm shows, but man, on the resale side, that stuff's hard to move.
It's just hard. You know, you start. I talk about it a lot here. Where you're talking about buying groups. You know, I talk about the 1 to 2 year old guy, the 3 to 5 year old guy, the 6 to 10 year old, and then older than 10, and how those guys are playing in that. The issue that I see right now with the price of equipment has twofold. One is obviously interest rates. That's a big driving factor in that. But the other side of that too is when you're looking at a used piece of equipment, what you start having the conversation of, okay, so here's what the new one costs, here's what the used one costs. At what point if I can afford $700,000 or $800,000, and you just got a used one out there for $650 or $600, more than likely I can probably just go ahead and get the new one. So, and it makes more sense for me to get the new one, right?
Under warranty,
under warranty, and there's some manufacturer programs out there where you might be getting 4.9% interest or something like that, right?
Yep.
So now you're looking at those things, and what you said earlier, how used equipment follows the price of new up. That is one of those things that is, from an economic perspective, that is not something that is. If the price of a new tractor goes up 6%, the used doesn't go up 6% with it. It might in some years. Some years might go up 2%, might go up 4%, might go 6%. Combines hardly ever does a 6% price increase equate to a 6% price increase or 6% raise.
It's a while
in
to
used.
get there.
It's just like you've got to, but it compounds down, and that's the thing that you're looking at. And as I'm watching all this kind of unfold and go, the conversations are going to start changing from I'm trading for X dollars per hour now, and you want me to trade for X now or Y now because because it's just how the dynamics of the used equipment marketplace works. So it's getting to be not that that's anything new. That's always been around. I mean, we've fought that back in 14, 15, 16 as the market was declining and you were looking at how things were expanding and contracting and what they were doing. But they're just significantly bigger numbers now. And I think that's the scary part of it.
Yeah. And it's real easy if you don't hit that used value just right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a 10% error could cost you real money.
Yeah.
Real fast. So you do that too many times and you're out of a job as a used equipment manager.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
It doesn't take
tough. No, it doesn't take long. And you start looking at that and next thing you know, one thing turns into another and you're stretching out 5% there and 7% over here and 10% over there. And you got to get the deal done, this, that, and the other thing. And next thing you know, you've got the majority of your used equipment. I mean, 25 or 30% of your equipment is grossly overpriced by 10 or 15%, and that's I've done that. I'm as guilty of that as anybody else is. So it's such a hard thing to throw a dart at and try to peg when you're, especially when the market's doing this and doing this. You know what I mean? It's like I thought the best time to be the used guy was 17, 18, 19 because everything was just kind of there. It just there was no big dynamic swings. And now when you're coming out of an epic run up like we saw in 12, going into 13 and 14, you're seeing the same thing now. And I write an article for Successful Farming, and I did a kind of an illustration of what it looked like in between 2000 and 2021 to 2023. Something like 10,000 tractors got taken off the market, and they put 5,000 back on the market in 1 year last year. Used ones get back on, and you start looking at that trajectory of what that line's doing, how it's going back up like this, and it came down kind of like this. That's a big deal when you start looking at that at that value and what that is. And unfortunately, you know, I joke with Aaron Fennell all the time. I'd love to just go sell 1,500 and 3,500 hour tractors all day long, because man, you'd print a mint, because you just can't find them. There's just not out there, because the front end of the washout cycle is so loaded up with those 1 to 3 year old machines. And it doesn't matter what it is, tractors, combines, whatever.
You know, from a producer's standpoint, you know, that's a spare tractor for them. It's like, you know, I wish I didn't have to unhook this one every time I wanted to hook this other thing up.
Right.
You know, I'll just go grab another tractor. You know, it's way easier to justify that, you know, 15 to 3,000 hour machine than it is a brand new one anymore. And that's what's driving the volatility in the used equipment market for all products. You know, I mean, choppers is the big thing that I look at now. That's what's in my wheelhouse now. But you know, it used to be combines, and it was the same deal. But you know, I think it's a unique dynamic now this time around, because we saw such just incredible price increases so fast on this stuff that the secondary, let alone the tertiary market, has not caught up to that yet. You know, the guys that are buying new combines, new tractors, new choppers, whatever, you know, the bigger operators, maybe they've got multiple choppers or combines or whatever, you know, they have, it's budgeted for in their budget meetings every year. Okay, this year we trade one of the choppers in, this year we trade one of the tractors in, or whatever. And it's just, and because they run so many acres, or their operation is such a size that they can't afford not to keep that equipment fresh. You know, it's got to stay under warranty, because we've run the numbers, and from a support point of view, you know, from a maintenance point of view, it makes sense to keep it under warranty, whatever their rationale is. The bigger guys are always going to build that into the budget. And because they buy a new machine every year, every other year, it's not such a shock to their system when they see what this new stuff costs. So they keep ratcheting it up, you know, based on last year's price increase. Well, we figure it's going to be this much of a price increase for next year. We better put a little bit more in the budget to trade choppers next time around, because we know it's the stuff always goes up. It never comes back down. So, but then when you have such an exponential price increase, so many over, you know, such a short period, it really threw a wrench in that program, even for the guys that were budgeting for it, but they still traded. Just because, you know, they know that if that machine goes another year older, it's worth X less, and it's going to cost us this much more for maintenance. You know, we got to go through the KP now. We got to do this. We got to, you know, change liners or whatever. So they still want to keep that thing fresh, just because they want to keep on that rotation. There's enough guys like that now, but the problem is on the secondary market, unless you have a guy that's always willing to take that guy's trade, which used to be the norm with combines. You know, that was always the deal. You know, you talk about your trade groups. You had this guy buys the new, Bill buys Jeff's old combine, 1 year old, and then Bob buys Bill's 2-year-old combine, and then so on and so forth.
All the way down.
That's even getting more and more scarce now, even that situation, just because the stuff costs so much. You know, it's just no fun to trade machines anymore. You know, it used to be kind of a fun thing. You know, we're going to get a new combine this year, but now it's like, oh my God, can we pencil this? You know, but the second and third hand guy, you know, he's not followed that trend. And now you're talking, you know, it's going to cost him $100,000 more to get that 2-year-old machine this time around that it did last year. You know, that's enough to make him just keep what he's got. You know. And he's definitely not considering a new one ever at that point. You know, he may have been a guy that you could throw a demo machine at, you know, sell him a brand new one, you know, if it was cheap enough or it seemed like a deal. He's not there anymore. He's gone, you know, so you're relying so heavily on these guys that, you know, because of their business model, they're going to trade every year, and they're going to trade X amount of machines every year. So you're relying on more of those corporate guys, especially when it comes to this bigger stuff. You know, but that just makes it so much harder to move that big iron on the back end if you don't have that second guy just waiting in the wings to take that big machine off your hands. I mean, how many second and third hand guys that are just, you know, looking, you know, on Tractor House on a whim, you know, chopper's getting pretty tired. It's 6 or 7 years old. Maybe I should look at upgrading. You know, how many of those guys, one, need an 1,156 horsepower chopper? know, 14 row or even a 12 row head on it, you know, or even have the infrastructure to keep that material away from that machine to keep it running. You know, how many trucks do you need? How many packing tractors do you need to keep it away from a machine that size? You know, so at some point, it doesn't matter how cheap that big machine gets.
Yeah, it's a whole other animal.
You might not have a home for it just because, you know, it's not just a matter of, you know, oh, it seems like a bargain, I'll jump on it. There's so many other things that go along with that, you know. So,
and that's the especially when you look at harvesting equipment. Whether you're talking going from round bells to big squares, or you're talking going from a class 7 combine to a class 9 combine, or going from you know, like you just talked about, an 8-row chopper to a 12-row chopper, a 14-row chopper, or something like that. It's not the price of the machine that's the deterrent there. It's the infrastructure and the support equipment that goes with it. That's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole other podcast. You do a whole other podcast on just support equipment, you know? So it's crazy to watch how these things come together and move around, and how these market influencers that we see take place are getting to be a bigger and bigger part of the conversation, especially when you're looking at who's the first used buyer and who's that second used buyer. And when you get to that third and fourth used buyer, I think that's when the international market opens up. And I think that's when you starting to see, but still though, it's not like those guys are beating down the door. You know what I mean? You know, there's always an issue with capital. It seems like anytime you want to take something, you need to place other.
And they're you know, the one thing I learned dealing with so many international people over the years, one thing I learned is that used equipment jockeys are the same everywhere on the planet.
Yes, they are. They're exactly the same.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. They're going to try every trick in the book to steal it as best they can. And yeah, that's business. I get it. You know,
that's how they do it.
The international market is, I think for us, going to be a critical part of our business moving forward. It is now, and I think it's only going to be more so.
Sure.
And I'm trying to exploit that as much as I possibly can, and try to build as many international relationships as I can. You know, I attended Agro Food Expo in Guanajuato, Mexico in November, just to see if I could meet some used equipment guys down there, or just maybe make some connections down there. And I did, and it was definitely worthwhile. But the problem with those markets with Mexico, I think probably our biggest 3 markets, you know, or at least where we get the most activity from, is Mexico, the Middle East, and China. You know, for our products. And the problem is, in all 3 of those markets, one, they want to steal everything. You know, you can't blame them, but it's just, that's the truth. That's what we have to deal with. And 2, they don't need this huge equipment. They can't use it.
Right.
You know, they can't use Class 8, 9 combines. They can't use Class 990s, John Deere 9900s, Krone 1180s. You know, they just plain can't use some of this huge equipment. There's just no way they can utilize it, so they don't buy it. You know, so that's still, it further compounds the problem that we have with this big equipment. You know, so like I say, it's impressive to see this, you know, the world's biggest chopper at the farm show and everything, and boy, that sucker eats corn like crazy, and it's cool, but you know, on the resale side, it's a tough row to hoe to try to digest those machines. So.
And it's like that with everything, whether you're talking, you know, 90-foot planters, you're talking whatever it is you're talking. I mean, everything's got a breaking point there somewhere where the secondary marketplace is just either non-existent or really hard to find, or it's got to be cheap enough that someone can say, make it work. And I'll figure it out.
Even after COVID has simmered down, that boat ride across the water is still pretty expensive.
It is. Yeah.
And not only that, but then you got to get it wherever it's going inland, you know, and it all adds cost. So, I've made it my endeavor to identify as many emerging markets as I can around the world for our products, you know, because I think for one, you know, the China and the Mexico market are pretty saturated, I think, at this point with used equipment. You know, it's been going for so long. And not only that, but now, like, and I pick on China a lot. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't sell anything to China if I didn't have to, you know, but, you know, they're still buying. And if the stuff isn't selling anywhere else, you know, you have to do something with it. So to China it goes. But, you know, there's been such a presence with our used equipment from all manufacturers in China for so long now that now you start to see the manufacturers set up shop in China and some of the surrounding Asian countries. And because they need someplace for support for parts and service and things like that. And they think, well, if there's a market there, okay, the market has now, it's not emerging anymore. It's already emerged. Now the market is mature, and now we can actually sell some new equipment in that market. So then once the manufacturers set up shop there, it gets a little bit more difficult to sell our wore out used junk
Right.
overseas,
Right.
that we can't sell here, because now they've gotten the taste, and now they want the high tech, and now they want the later model, lower hour stuff, and they're still not willing to pay for it. But that's because there's enough of it in their own country that they don't have a scarcity issue in that country. So my endeavor has been to try to find as many emerging markets as I can, try to break into. But that's a tough task,
It is.
The international market is so fickle, and it is there's so much smoke and mirrors. I feel, there's so many little nuances and subtleties and ins and outs of that market. It's just when you think you've got it dialed in, you got nothing.
Yeah, you learn pretty quick that you don't know much.
Just like that. So.
Yep, that is very true.
Yep.
Well, John, I think that's probably a good place to stop, man. If folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what you're doing at Krone, what's the best way to do that?
Probably email. You can reach out via my email. That's jon.miller@krone-na.com. So that's JON, no H, JON .MILLER at Krone, KRONE-NA.com.
Right on. Right on, man. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast, bud.
No problem. Appreciate you having me.
Best of luck. Hey, so talk a little bit about the Moving Iron Summit. You've been a couple times now. What do you think of that event, and planning on coming again in 24?
Absolutely. Yep. Looking forward to it again this year. It's indispensable, I think, part of my job to attend it. There's no other place on the planet where you get that many used equipment, or at least, used minded individuals in one room. And, the speakers are great. And I think most everybody will tell you the speakers are great. We do get a lot out of that, but probably the biggest thing is the networking.
Networking side.
And, meeting and talking to other, attendees at the round tables and just at the dinner table and stuff like that. I've learned more that way and made more meaningful connections there than probably any other meeting that I've ever attended. So, of course, I'm a little biased being strictly used equipment,
right?
But and also the Dealership Minds thing that Lassiter puts on is great too, and I try to attend that whenever it's close, at least. And same deal there. Just the networking and just being able to be amongst other like-minded people and kind of bounce ideas around and stuff is just priceless.
Right
so,
on.
Yeah, appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, man, thanks for coming. I look forward to seeing you again this year. And, John, appreciate you, man. And let's keep in touch.
All right, man. Sounds good.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast. Check out the YouTube version of this over on the YouTube channel, which is Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Check that out. And then go to Snapchat and TikTok as well at Moving Iron Podcast. Check that out. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related. And if you want to see John at the Moving Iron Podcast, or at the Moving Iron Summit, that is the November 4th through 6th in Nashville, Tennessee. So more information about that, send me an email at movingironpodcast@movingironpodcast.com. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour, Jon Miller. Let's go some iron, folks. Out.
The Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by these great sponsors. Are you looking to value your equipment more accurately, target the right buyers and close more deals, reach your ideal customer? Then look no further. Fusable isn't just about ag data, it's about action. Our best-in-class solution empowers you to value your equipment accurately, make informed decisions, and find the perfect prospects. Ignite your dealership's growth at fusable.com/movingiron-podcast. Out in the field, every decision counts. You wouldn't plant without testing your soil, so why would you prospect blind? Introducing EDA, your one-stop shop for ag equipment intel. EDA goes beyond specs and prices. You get deep dive data on every piece of equipment like UCC filings that help track ownership changes and uncover potential sales leads. D&B firmographics, which help you understand the financial health and buying power of potential customers. Market trends that help you stay ahead of the curve, and insights on equipment demands and pricings. With EDA, you're not just looking at data, you're seeing opportunity. Find the right buyer, sell smarter, and build lasting relationships. Visit edadata.com for your free demo and unlock the power of knowledge. For over 80 years, Iron Solutions has been your go-to data source for ag dealers, lenders, and manufacturers. Get powerful appraisal and value forecasting tools that fuel profitable decisions anytime, anywhere. Get your free demo at ironsolutions.com. Iron Solutions, confidence in every click. Today, there are many ways to finance ag equipment, but nobody delivers simple, fast, or flexible financing like AgDirect. Learn more about your options to buy, lease, and refinance equipment at agdirect.com. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving higher in the 21st century.